In the heart of a quiet Bavarian forest, an entire family was slaughtered, one by one, inside their own farmhouse. No valuables were taken, no signs of forced entry, but in the days that followed, neighbors still saw smoke curling from the chimney. Someone was living there with the corpses. Based on a terrifying real-life mystery from 1922, this is the story of Hinterkaifeck, a case soaked in blood, secrets, and whispers from the attic that still echo through the woods. Today, The Nameless Attic. A short story inspired by the real Hinterkaifeck case, Germany, 1922. The sounds began in winter. When night fell over the silence of the Bavarian forest, Mr. Andreas Gruber heard footsteps coming from the attic, repeating around midnight. Clack, clack, clack. His wife, Mrs. Kazilia, said it must be mice. But mice don't whisper. They don't turn pages of the Bible without hands. One January morning, Andreas found a copy of the Münchener Neueste Nachrichten. Someone had read it, though no one in the household had bought a paper. His daughter Victoria, 35 and widowed, started locking her bedroom door each night. His little granddaughter, also named Kazilia, 7 years old, said she saw a dark figure hanging upside down on the roof. The former maid, Frau Annie, trembling hands and pale face, told the parish priest that someone walked outside her door each night. The sound of a door creaking open, a breath brushing close to her ear. One night, she opened her eyes and saw a figure standing at the foot of her bed, only to vanish into the wall. She quit immediately. A week later, Maria Baumgartner was hired to replace her. She was a stranger, never been to Hinterkaifeck. As her carriage stopped at the farmhouse, she saw a wisp of smoke curling from the chimney, even though the family claimed they hadn't lit a fire that morning. Andreas began searching every room at night, carrying an oil lamp and a walking stick. One time, he discovered deep scratches on the attic floor, as if something heavy had been dragged back and forth. In the storage room, he found a wooden door, nailed shut from the inside. Though he had no memory of ever using it. One night in the barn, he saw a rope tied into a noose hanging from the rafters. No one in the family had tied it. The next morning, Victoria said little Joseph, 2 years old, cried all night, saying the man with the cap was standing outside the window. On the night of March 30th, a hunter named Franz Fischer, camping half a mile from Hinterkaifeck, claimed he saw a lantern swaying around the barn at about 3 a.m. Moments later came the shrieking of pigs and terror, then silence. He assumed someone in the Gruber house had fallen ill, and Owen knew that this was the first night of the murders. The morning of March 31st, Mrs. Kazilia heard a harmonium playing from Victoria's room. The tune was the funeral hymn Der Mond ist aufgegangen, a sorrowful melody often used for children's burials. Victoria, however, was outside with her parents in the barn. The room was empty. That night, one by one, the family members were lured to the barn. Andreas was first, hearing strange noises from the cattle. Then his wife followed. Victoria next, then little Kazilia. The child died, clutching a handful of her own torn out hair. All were bludgeoned to death with a mattock. Their eyes were left wide open, mouths agape as if screaming. Inside the house, Maria and baby Joseph were also murdered. The killer took nothing, broke nothing, simply covered the corpses with hay and left them there. For several days after, neighbors saw smoke rising from the Hinterkaifeck chimney. Someone fed the cows, trimmed the horses' hooves, even placed fresh bread on the kitchen table, as if preparing dinner. Investigators later found the murder weapon hidden behind an attic wall, alongside an old cloth stained with blood, and a small note written in ancient German script. I listened to them for weeks. They never once heard me. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor and former lover of Victoria, was the first to find the bodies. When asked how he knew the exact layout of the house, he remained silent. Rumor had it he was Joseph's real father, but Victoria refused to marry him. Another suspect was Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, believed to have died in the war. Some claimed he survived and returned mentally broken. One anonymous letter sent to the village read, "We buried the wrong man." The real one returned with an axe in hand. Some believed the killer was a deranged war veteran, living feral in the forest, filled with hate. Others whispered that Hinterkaifeck stood on a cursed pilgrimage path, once home to a monastery that buried blood rituals beneath its floors. A passing monk once warned, "That place is not for the living. It remembers." The Hinterkaifeck farm was torn down. A wooden cross now stands over its ruined foundation. On March 31st each year, some say you can still hear footsteps in the attic echoing from the woods. People avoid speaking its name because it hears. What do you think? Was the murderer someone who once lived inside that house? Did the family's secrets run so deep they swallowed themselves whole? Or is there still someone or something watching us from above every night from the attic, and we simply never hear it? The Amityville File, The Unlocked Door. They said it was just a house, a beautiful home on a quiet street, until 6 people were found butchered in their beds, and the killer stayed for days, eating their food, lighting their fireplace, living among the dead. When a new family moved in, the walls began to whisper. The doors opened on their own. And at exactly 3:15 a.m., something walked the halls again. This is the Amityville case, the horror that didn't end with death. Based on the real case at 112 Ocean Avenue, the Ronald DeFeo Jr. murders, 1974, the reported phenomena of the Lutz family, 1975, and documents related to the Amityville case. On November 13, 1974, Suffolk County Police received an emergency call at 6:35 p.m. from Ronald DeFeo Jr. "I think my parents have been shot. They're not moving." I'm Detective Edward Harmon, with 12 years of homicide experience. But nothing could have prepared me for a case that would make me question everything I once believed. That we arrived at 112 Ocean Avenue, a 2-story Dutch colonial house by the river, under the dim glow of twilight. No signs of forced entry from the outside. Inside, the metallic stench of blood mingled with a moldy odor. Death here was not recent. We found Mr. Ronald DeFeo Sr. and his wife Louise, dead in bed, bullets through the chest and head. Dawn, 18, Allison, 13, Mark, 12, and John Matthew, 9. All lying face down, killed with a .35 caliber rifle. No screams, no struggle, no signs of resistance. Each one lay exactly in their usual sleeping positions, as if they had accepted death without a fight. The strangest detail, no neighbors heard a single gunshot, and the Marlin .35 rifle had no suppressor. In the interrogation room, Ronald kept changing his story. First, a stranger killed my family. Then, it was me, but I wasn't controlling my hands. And finally, he whispered, as if pleading, I was only the last one. Others came before me, and it's still in the house. He spoke of a voice in the walls, a red room, and something that had known his name since childhood. I returned to the scene on the night of November 15th to examine details. Under flashlight, I sketched out the house's layout. A living room, unusually cold, even with the heating on. Allison's bedroom, blood trail flowing against. Gravity, basement, a small passage blocked by wooden crates. I crawled in. Inside was a square room, painted red, with no light, only the smell of ash and melted wax. On the wall, it waits in the hollow place. Beneath loose floor tiles, I found a small eyeless wooden figure and a knife not recorded in the evidence log. I visited Father Callahan, a priest who had once entered the DeFeo house. When I asked him what he felt, he stared at me, voice hoarse and eyes dull. I prayed in that house. But what I encountered was not a demon. It was older. It had no form, only awareness. I placed my hand on the basement door and lost my voice for a week. On the night of November 19th, I decided to sleep in the house to document the phenomena. I set up audio recorders, 3 static cameras. Went to bed at 1:00 exactly 3:15 a.m. An alarm clock rang. No one had set it. The audio picked up slow, steady footsteps on the second floor. Even though no one was there, .1 camera captured a shadowy figure dashing across the hallway. It couldn't have been a reflection. The room was completely dark. By December 1974, the case was closed. Ronald was convicted, but I kept digging. Unofficially, I found construction records. The house was built on land once used for tribal rites by the Hinterkaifeck people, where the dead were buried standing up, so they would never look upon the sun again. A handwritten journal, author unknown, was found behind a wall in Allison's room. When blood falls at the right time, the door opens, and when the mirror shows no reflection, it walks through. At the end of 1975, the Lutz family moved in. They fled after just 28 days. From the psychological reports I copied, George Lutz woke up at 3:15 every night, drenched in sweat, heart racing. Kathy Lutz saw a figure crawling across the ceiling. Their young daughter spoke with Jody, the flying pig with red eyes. What they left behind: a family photo taken in front of the fireplace. In the mirror behind them, a 7th figure. I retired in 1980, but I kept the Amityville file. It's old, yellowed, and strangely warm to the touch. Last night, I heard 3 rhythmic knocks on my window glass. When I opened it, lying on the balcony railing was a small paper slip. The time has come. It still remembers. And this time, it knows your name. The Axeman Case of New Orleans. A city haunted by jazz. A killer who strikes when the music stops. One letter from hell, and a melody that saved lives. This is not just a murder story. This is a warning. The axe killer and the deadly jazz notes haunting a city of brass and blood. Story based on real events. The Axeman of New Orleans, 1918 to 1919. A serial killer who was never caught. This city has known blood before, but not cold blood like this. May 1918, I, Detective Michael Bouchard, was called to a scene on Upper Street, an Italian-owned grocery. The Maggio family. Police had broken the door. Inside, Joseph and Catherine Maggio were murdered with an axe, their heads nearly split in two. The weapons were left behind, a bloodied razor blade and the family's axe, discarded right at the scene that NO money was taken. No objects smashed, no footprints, only a cracked bathroom tile, behind which we found a slip of paper written in. A trembling hand. When the moon fades, I come. When the horn stops, I take. 2 weeks later, another Italian family, the Bessemer household, attacked in the same manner. Break in through the back door, panel was shattered. The family's own axe used, and I noticed a pattern. No witnesses ever heard screams and no signs of forced locks. He preferred removing bricks or dislodging wooden panels. Always, the axe belonged to the victim's home, always left behind after use. Anna Bessemer survived. In her delirium, she whispered, "He has no face, just a shadow shaped like a man, with an axe shining like the moon." March 13th, 1919. The Times-Picayune received an anonymous letter written in a mix of Gothic and calligraphic script. I am not human. I am spirit and demon. I am the Axeman from hell. In the letter, he warned that on the night of March 19th, he would return to New Orleans and spare anyone in a house filled with jazz music. The city panicked. That night, bars, homes, churches, all played jazz. Some even hired full bands to play all night. I remember a whole district echoing with horns till 4 a.m., as if the city itself prayed through brass and bass. N01 died that night. But I know he walked the alleys. He had chosen. He just waited. I began connecting the dots. Victims all lived near the old train line. Most were Italian immigrants. Especially strict Catholics. 2 witnesses described the same thing. A black shadow with backward bent joints. I found an old 1890 case file, an unsolved murder in the Faubourg Treme neighborhood. That victim had also been axed. But the odd part, the killer had written in blood on a mirror. Music keeps me awake. Silence makes me hungry. The killer was never found. August 1919, the final attack. A girl named Sarah Lawman survived an axe assault in her sleep. The back wall had been dismantled. The axe was left behind. But this time, a message was carved into her wall. You played music on the 19th. You were chosen, but I heard the violin crying. Sarah had played classical violin every night, not jazz. I asked what she had played on March 19th. She answered, Adagio for strings, a very slow version. I didn't understand, but I know the Axeman did, and he spared her because of that song. He vanished after that in Oh Farewell. No new victims. No more blood. That I wrote my final report in 1920 and placed it in the case file drawer. But sometimes I still hear a knock at my back door, even when no one's there. I always check. and always find a single music note drawn in charcoal resting at the center of the floor. What if you checked into a hotel and never checked out? In 1935, a man entered room 1046, and by the time they opened the door again, he was covered in blood, whispering only one name, Don. This is a true story, and no one ever figured out who he really was. Cold case, room 1046. A faceless death in the Hell Hotel. This is not a fictional story. What you are about to hear is real, recorded in the case files of the Kansas City Police Department, Missouri, USA. The victim truly died. Hotel staff saw him. Mysterious phone calls were made. The police opened room 1046 and stepped into a nightmare that to this day. Nearly a century later, the victim's true identity remains a mystery. No identification documents, no confirmed suspects, no clear motive, only blood and unanswered questions. January 2nd, 1935. It was cold and windy along 12th Street, where the President Hotel stood tall like a medieval fortress in the heart of Kansas City. A tall, thin man with neatly combed brown hair, dressed formally but in worn clothes, walked into the lobby that he requested a room on a high floor away from the street. Room 1046, that the name given at the desk was Roland T. Owen from Los Angeles. He carried no luggage, only a comb, a toothbrush, and a few personal items. The first odd detail, he looked anxious, constantly glancing around as if being watched. The bellboy named Randolph Probst took him to his room. On the way, Owen repeated, "I hate windows facing the street. Too noisy and not safe." At first, nothing seemed amiss. But that evening, maid Mary Soptic went up to clean the room and was met with a strange sight. The door was locked from the outside. Lights were dim, curtains tightly drawn. Owen sat in darkness. When she entered, he asked her to keep the lights low, speaking in a flat voice. "I'm expecting a friend to visit." Mary noticed a small bruise on his forehead. It looked like someone had hit him. The next day, when she returned, things were even stranger. The room remained dark, and Owen whispered that she not touch anything. The phone rang. He picked it up and said, "No, Dawn. I don't want to eat. I told you to leave me alone." Who was Dawn? And why was Owen so afraid of him? On the evening of January 3rd, a call was made to the hotel operator from room 1046, complaining the phone line was dead. A staff member went up to check, but had to knock 3 times before a voice finally responded, barely a whisper. "Come in, unlock the door." But the door was locked from the inside. When the staff asked again, Owen replied curtly, "Never mind." They left, irritated and confused. At 5 a.m. on January 4th, the phone rang again. The hotel staff had enough. They went up and forced the door open. The door burst open. The room was pitch black. The lamp was shattered, wires torn out. In the beam of a flashlight, they saw Roland T. Owen, slumped forward, drenched in blood. His forehead was deeply gashed. His chest and abdomen were riddled with stab wounds. A lung was punctured, intestines slashed. Blood trails led from the bed to the bathtub. Amazingly, he was still alive, mumbling deliriously. I fell into the bathtub. I fought with Don, the name again. But when asked further, Owen lost consciousness. Owen died a few hours later at the hospital. Police found signs of a struggle: cut wires, fingerprints on the wall, an empty liquor bottle, but no clothes, no wallet, no identification. The name Roland T. Owen was false. They checked national death records, no matches. His photo appeared in newspapers, but no one recognized him. Who was Don? The only name ever mentioned? No one knew. No video recordings, no solid witnesses. Those who entered room 1046 remained mysteries that a mysterious woman named Louise called the morgue, crying but refusing to claim the body. A man later phoned the funeral home and sent money for burial. Both vanished without a trace. On the day Owen was buried, a bouquet of white roses was sent to his grave with a note: "Forever loved, Louise." Police traced the package in vain. The sender used a fake name, paid in cash, and used a false address. Months later, a surprising lead emerged. A woman in Los Angeles saw Owen's photo and claimed he resembled her daughter's former boyfriend, a man named Artemis Ogletree, who had left home in 1934. DNA didn't exist back then. No confirmation could be made. Some investigators believe this was a mob-style hit, perhaps underworld-related. Don may have been the killer, and Owen, or Artemis, might have betrayed someone. The brutality, slow and personal, resembled a warning more than a crime of passion. But why didn't he flee? Why did he remain silent? Why not name his attacker, even on his deathbed? The final question, also the first: who was Owen, really? Years passed. The President Hotel still stands, now a historic landmark. But room 1046 was renumbered, sealed off, and eventually dismantled. Some stories, even with witnesses, evidence, and police files, are never solved. And Owen, the man who died nameless in a locked room, is one of them. That if you ever visit Kansas City, stop before the President Hotel and listen. Perhaps, in the biting wind, you'll hear a whisper: "Dawn, I told you, leave me alone."
You've just heard a true story, or at least a piece of the truth, but what you just heard might still be happening somewhere out there. This is THN Mystery, where every shadow leaves a trace. Let us know your thoughts on the story, or tell us what you want to hear next. See you again, if you still dare to return.